Hello everyone, Mason here. How are you doing? Today it's time to talk about The Hobbit. In January, for the first time in a long time, I read The Hobbit and I wanted to talk to you guys about it. Now this is going to be a spoilerific review. Spoilerific. Not sure about that word. Let's just say there's going to be spoilers. Lots of them. I'm going to jump right into it because if I ramble too much, this could end up being an extremely long video. To help me, I'm going to run through some of the notes that I kept whilst reading. Right from the get-go, The Hobbit is just charming, and I think it's amazing how quickly Tolkien transports you to Middle-earth and makes it feel like you've been there forever. I'm sure for first-time readers, it's quite easy to visualise Hobbiton, but for returning fans, it's nostalgia. You're back in that familiar world. Let's take a look at my first few notes. Bag End has all of its rooms off one passage. All the best rooms are on the left, because those are the rooms with the windows. I just love this. Tolkien casually giving us a quick glimpse into the world of architectural design and interior decorating in Hobbiton. All the best rooms are the ones with the windows. A lovely bit of natural lighting. I guess hobbits are just really into Feng Shui. The idea of a Took once having a fairy wife is, quote, of course, ridiculous. Now I can't remember whether that particular line comes from Tolkien as the narrator or whether it's how the hobbits think, but either way, I find it pretty amusing. It's a fantasy world. We've got dwarves, elves, trolls, goblins, dragons. Fairies? That's just a step too far. If it's what the hobbits think, that's just typical. That's what they're like. Sure, it's a fantasy world, but they're so sheltered from it that even if there was fairies, they wouldn't believe in them. On the other hand, if it comes from Tolkien, then that's just one of those quirky things he does with his narrative voice that makes it feel so much like you're a child being read a bedtime story. It just feels so Tolkien-esque. I wish there was a better way of putting it, but I don't think there is. Bilbo is smoking a pipe that's so long it almost reaches to his woolly toes. Sorry Bilbo, but that's just impractical. If it's so long that it almost reaches to your feet, it's too long. I mean, that's got to be difficult to transport. It's got to be heavy to start with. Does it double as a walking stick? Where does he keep it? So many questions, so little time. I think if you took a drink every time somebody has a smoke, you would have some serious liver damage by the end of this book. Gandalf saying that he's looking for somebody to share in an adventure is vaguely threatening in Andy's voice. Yeah, so I can't say that I was a massive fan of Andy Serkis's interpretation of Gandalf. He had this deep, gravelly voice that made him sound a lot rougher than Ian McKellen's version. He just lacked that warm, friendly tone, and I missed it, so I didn't like it quite as much. Oh, just a bit of casual vandalism from Gandalf. How rude. What's interesting is Gandalf marking Bilbo's front door is a moment that could be interpreted different ways depending on how much context you've got. To a first-time reader, it could just be Gandalf being a mischievous, meddlesome wizard that's just messing with Bilbo for the sake of it, maybe to spite him for the conversation that they've just had. To a long-time fan, doesn't it just seem more like Gandalf being guided by his foresight? Knowing that Bilbo needs to be the one to come on this adventure because he's got a much bigger part to play in what's to come. The dwarves basically bringing an orchestra along with them makes me laugh. Bilbo shares the hill with other hobbits, and this has got to be the Tolkien equivalent of having a massive house party in a block of flats. I just find it hilarious imagining all the other hobbits getting outraged, being curtain twitchers trying to find out what's going on. I also find it pretty funny that when Bilbo's asked to fetch a lamp because it's getting dark, he has half a mind to fetch the lamp and half a mind to pretend to and hide behind the beer barrels. So in terms of this first section, I think that it's pretty great. It draws you in, it introduces all the characters, and it doesn't take that long to get the story started. It's immediately obvious that it's aimed at a younger audience. It's mysterious, fun, a little bit bizarre, I couldn't help but feel that it was designed to be read chapter by chapter, night by night, just before bedtime. It feels like the start of a magical adventure rather than the beginning of an epic quest, if that makes any sense. I couldn't help laughing at the fact that when the dwarves are talking about dragons, they say that they couldn't tell the difference between good gold and bad gold, but they do know the market value. I'm not sure why, but it just really tickled me. Going into this, I couldn't remember that much about the whole troll incident, but it's a great example of the somewhat wacky, childlike fun. It's a perfect opportunity for playful parents to do some silly voices, and even though it is a dangerous situation, the kids are going to know that the heroes are getting out of it somehow. I personally got a lot of amusement out of it. William, Bert, and Tom. All these fantastical names, and then the trolls just sound like three old blokes you'd meet down the pub. It tickled me that the dwarves just keep on going up, one by one. Go on, Nori, the other 9 haven't come back yet. Go see what's going on, he'll be fine, I promise. I love that the problem is solved by Gandalf, who, despite being an incredibly powerful wizard, just decides to mess with the trolls. It shows him using his wits rather than his power. He just does impressions of them and pits them against each other so that they argue until the sun comes up, and that's it, it's done. Problem solved. Sure, he could have blasted them, we know that he's good with fire, but it's probably easier and arguably more fun just to wind them up. I also find it endlessly amusing that Tolkien just can't help himself. When they get to Rivendell, he says that they stayed there, but not much happened, so there isn't much to tell us. And then he spends the next 15 minutes just telling us about it. Goblins invented many terrible things. And it's likely that some of those inventions are those that trouble man today, especially those designed to kill large numbers of people. This line is so great. Not only is it a brilliant way of showing us exactly how evil the goblins are, but it's also almost like a bit of social commentary. It's as if Tolkien is calling the sort of person that invents those type of weapons a goblin, or at least saying that they have a mind like a goblin. On a lighter note, it's so amusing to me that the goblins put on soft shoes so that the company can't hear them coming. Wait a second, did the goblins invent sneakers? Then we get the discovery of the ring, and honestly, I adore that entire section. I can't help it, as a lifelong fan of The Lord of the Rings, it's my favourite part of the entire novel. I love the way it's actually discovered. Bilbo finds it in the dark and puts it in his pocket without even really thinking about it. It's the most important moment of Bilbo's life. It's one of the more important moments in the history of Middle-earth, and yet it's something that Bilbo just does absent-mindedly. That's not a coincidence though. It's an example of how powerful the ring is. It starts to work its magic immediately. It wants to get away from Gollum. It needs Bilbo to take it with him. So it takes advantage of the fact that Bilbo is distracted and more or less slips itself quietly into his pocket. Listening to riddles in the dark is so much fun, especially with Andy Serkis doing Gollum's voice. Be warned though, audiobook listeners, he really goes for it, just throws himself into it. I guess he knows that that's what we all want from him, and he does deliver, but you're definitely going to have to adjust your volume a few times. The fun makes it easy to forget just how crucial that chapter is to the narrative of The Lord of the Rings though. The ring finds a new owner. Gollum learns the name of Baggins, which he'll later have tortured out of him in Mordor. Without riddles in the dark, we don't get the War of the Ring. We don't get the story that we know and love. It's an undeniably iconic chapter. Another example of how quickly the ring can start to influence somebody is Bilbo keeping it a secret once he reunites with the dwarves. It's crazy that he's already starting to feel its effects at that time. I think one of the best examples of it feeling like a children's story is the section after they escape from the goblins though. It's the part where they end up hiding in trees whilst hundreds and hundreds of wolves gather round ready to eat them. Yeah, I take that back. Hundreds and hundreds of wolves? That's not child friendly, that's nightmare fuel. This time we actually get to see Gandalf using his power, throwing different coloured flames at the wolves so the kids can go, wow, as he burns the wolves alive and starts a forest fire in the process. Gandalf, collateral damage, mate. Then we get it, don't we? The origin of the most annoying questions surrounding The Lord of the Rings, and what I like to call the Moria conspiracy. I don't understand why they don't just fly to Mordor on the back of the eagles. Gandalf literally tells them, "Fly, you fools!" He's clearly trying to give them a clue. It's a stealth mission. The eagles are massive. Sauron would see them coming from far, far away, and the Nazgul would be sent to intercept them. And no, Gandalf is not trying to give them a clue. He's saying fly, as in the old school usage of fly, which means move quickly. He's telling them, run away fast, you idiots. I'm okay. A mysterious, powerful being who's in touch with nature allows the company to stay at his house, and the pace grinds to a halt. No, it's not Tom Bombadil, this time it's Beorn. I have to say it, Beorn's house is my least favourite part. I really do feel like it kills the pace, which has, up until that point, been zipping along nicely, and the joke of introducing the dwarves 2 by 2 so that they don't make Beorn mad just goes on for way too long. To me, it feels like Bombadil and Beorn serve the same sort of purpose. To start with, it allows Tolkien to describe some pretty nature, which we all know he loves to do. It also demonstrates that there's some seriously powerful beings wandering Middle-earth, and allows the characters to rest up a bit before diving into the next dangerous part of the journey. If I had to pick between the two though, I would definitely choose Beorn. I mean, he sings less, he feels a bit more dangerous, and he can turn into a massive bear, which, let's be honest, is just cool. Luckily, it does feel like the pace picks right back up as soon as they get into Mirkwood, which feels like a character of its own. The oppressive darkness, the eyes watching them as they go, the river that they can't cross and that basically puts Bomba into a coma. It all combines to make it feel like Mirkwood is actively working against them. I like the battle with the spiders. It's fun, it's intense, and it allows Bilbo some time to shine, to be an actual hero, which he continues to be throughout the rest of the novel. I feel like Mirkwood is a pivotal point for Bilbo, where he realises that he is capable. He's not just along for the ride. Between saving them from the spiders and freeing them from their elvish prison, the dwarves need Bilbo, and after Mirkwood, he knows it. Lake Town is taken by surprise by the return of the king. Wait, what? Seriously though, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings hit a lot of the same beats, even if some of them are only slightly similar and not in the same order. A hobbit leaving the Shire to go on an adventure that they don't really want to go on. A trip to Rivendell, Moria and the Goblin Kingdom, Tom Bombadil and Beorn, Fangorn and Mirkwood, Aragorn and Thorin both being characters that need to reclaim their rightful place as the king. There's probably more, but those are just a few that I can think of. It's almost like Tolkien did it on purpose, eh? I love that when the dwarves finally get to the Lonely Mountain, they're like, yeah, let's just break the door down, I'm sure that'll work. I love the whole Lonely Mountain section, it's so much fun. Bilbo finally getting to be a burglar, sneaking in to get the cup. His conversation with Smaug. The dragon's uncontrollable rage at having a single cup stolen even though he's got that much treasure. The company needing to hide inside the passage while he goes absolutely ballistic. It's what you've been waiting for, and Tolkien delivers. Once again, I felt incredibly sorry for anybody who had to work on the same day as Andy Serkis was recording this part, because he throws himself 100% headfirst into the character of Smaug, and there was many times where I had to adjust my volume. I couldn't help but picture somebody trying to record a sweet fluffy romance in the next booth, only for Andy's angry dragon to come bleeding through. Oh, for God's sake, he's at it again. Andy, can you tone it down a bit, please? I can't lie, I was a bit disappointed at how easily Smaug is defeated. Yeah, sure, he takes out Lake Town in the process, but I didn't care. I didn't know enough about Lake Town or spend enough time there for it to matter. All I know is we get all this build-up, all this anticipation, and then a bird tells Bard where to shoot, and that's it. Smaug's dead. It just felt a little bit anticlimactic to me. I have to be honest though. Once Smaug is dead, I care a lot less about the story. I find the lead up to the Battle of the Five Armies quite frustrating because I hate Thorin's sudden nosedive into greed. I get why he doesn't want to deal with the elves, but his attitude towards Bard is just unreasonable. It really does only seem fair to give Bard a share in the treasure after he killed the dragon. Bilbo's so-called betrayal and subsequent dismissal actually made me cry as a kid. I was heartbroken that they weren't friends anymore, which is pretty funny, but also actually a pretty fond memory. It feels like it takes a little while to build to the Battle of Five Armies, but then it's also kind of underwhelming considering that Bilbo gets knocked out and misses most of it. At least we get an emotional moment afterwards though, as Bilbo and Thorin reconcile. The journey home felt a bit pointless. The adventure is over, and so is the story if we're being honest. At least in The Lord of the Rings they return to find the Shire changed, and they have to use what they've learnt to set things straight. In The Hobbit, Bilbo just retraces his steps, stays in Rivendell for a bit, goes back to the Shire, back to Bag End, and that's it. It just felt like a bit of a perfunctory way to tie everything in a neat little bow. Overall, I like The Hobbit. Do I love it? No, I've got to be honest, I don't think that I do. It's only really through nostalgia and its connection to The Lord of the Rings that it gets a place in my heart, and without that connection I don't think I would have enjoyed it at all, if only because I'm a boring grown-up and this is a wacky, magical children's story. I'm just not really the target audience, especially considering that I'm not a massive fantasy reader. That doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it for what it is though. A classic, a masterpiece, an icon, a cornerstone of culture. For grown-ups who aren't quite as boring as me, who still enjoy a good children's story, I'm sure this would be amazing even without the connection to The Lord of the Rings. It's a fantastic book for parents to read to their children to spark that love of literature, and it's a brilliant way to introduce kids to Middle-earth, and I can never argue with anybody doing that. In the end, The Hobbit is rated I for iconic. My question for today is this: if you had to give up either sweet or savoury snacks, which one would you agree to never eat again? Bonus question: what is your favourite snack? I'm talking if there was only one left on the shelf and someone else reached for it, you'd fight them for it. If you've enjoyed this video, the like and subscribe buttons are just sitting there, waiting to be pressed. Now press them, or I'll send a team of angry bears round to maul you to death. If you want to get in touch, say hi and have a chat, you know where the comments section is, and the link to my Twitter can be found in the description. Thanks ever so much for spending time with me today, guys. Until next time, take care. For now, I'm off, and you should have a good one. Far over. No, I'm just kidding, I'm not going to do that.